Patrick Mahomes against Jalen Hurts, the Chiefs against the Eagles, a rematch coming up this weekend in the Super Bowl. And if you're Joe Burrow sitting at home, unfortunately not in the Super Bowl for Bengals fans this upcoming weekend, he's sitting at home watching it like we are. Deep down, who should Joe Burrow be pulling for? Obviously, you have the rivalry with the Kansas City Chiefs. You don't like Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that's the face of the NFL. But Joe Burrow, many believe, is as good, if not better, talent-wise. But again, just with the limitations he has around him due to the front office and everything, just doesn't have that opportunity to do what we see Patrick Mahomes doing. So it pains Joe Burrow to watch what Patrick Mahomes is doing, just continuing to pile up Super Bowl appearance after Super Bowl appearance, Super Bowl championship after Super Bowl championship. He has the MVPs to go with it. There's a lot that just keeps being added to the trophy case for Patrick Mahomes. And then you have Jalen Hurts, who, like Joe Burrow, has been to a Super Bowl, but now Jalen Hurts has punched his ticket to a second Super Bowl, and a chance to knock off Patrick Mahomes in this Super Bowl would be huge for the legacy of Jalen Hurts, of course. Joe Burrow sitting back and having to watch both of these quarterbacks, watch both of these teams. It's painful to watch any of these teams win, but which one do you think Joe Burrow is pulling for this weekend? As I said, Patrick Mahomes, that legacy, he's tired of watching that legacy grow. Joe Burrow, every time Patrick Mahomes gets to another Super Bowl or wins one, the gap between him and Burrow gets bigger and bigger and bigger. You look at the QBs that everyone puts up at the top of the NFL. You have your Patrick Mahomes, you have your Josh Allen, obviously Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow's right up there. I'm not willing to put Jalen Hurts in that category, but to his credit, he is very successful. This is his second Super Bowl. All he does is win. And I think the fact that when you look at what he has done, being drafted in the same class as Joe Burrow, I do think that that plays a role in who Joe Burrow would go for in this. I'm not saying that Joe Burrow can never accomplish what Patrick Mahomes has accomplished to this point, but that gap is pretty wide. It would take a lot of time for Joe Burrow to have a resume similar to Patrick Mahomes. What you don't want, and I think if you twist this as well and say, especially in the MVP discussion, who does Joe Burrow want to win the MVP if it can't be him? I don't think he wants it to be Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson already has two. What's three going to hurt at this point? Let Lamar Jackson win three. All right. What you don't want is Patrick Mahomes to have the legacy he does. You don't want, Lamar Jackson already has two MVPs. It can't get any better than that outside of him matching it with playoff success. Josh Allen's a great regular season quarterback, puts up good numbers in the playoffs, just can't seem to win in the playoffs. And then Jalen Hurts, who we don't put in that category, but if he wins a Super Bowl, that's damning for Joe Burrow, who was drafted in that same class. You don't want Josh Allen to add an MVP trophy to his case as well. So I do believe if you're Joe Burrow, you want Patrick Mahomes to win. You want the Chiefs to win. If Patrick Mahomes wins another Super Bowl, that's just what he does. No one's going to look at Joe Burrow any different if that happens. But if Jalen Hurts, who was drafted in the same draft as Joe Burrow, back to a second Super Bowl already, just continues to win and then knocks off Patrick Mahomes in the process to win this Super Bowl, no one's going to view Joe Burrow as less than Jalen Hurts. But at the same time, from Joe Burrow's competitive drive, I have a hard time believing that he would be more sick with Patrick Mahomes winning another one over Jalen Hurts being another quarterback added to the list of getting something that Joe Burrow doesn't have. I think if you're Joe Burrow, I think you're pulling for Patrick Mahomes this weekend, as wild as that sounds.
I said this all through the AFC playoffs. I would rather the Chiefs win the Super Bowl than the Ravens or the Bills throughout the whole AFC playoffs. I think being the team that beat the Chiefs and they haven't lost a playoff game since the Bengals beat them, I think that means something to Bengals fans. I don't know how much it means outside of Cincinnati, but it's certainly a feather in our cap to be the last team that beat them. And to have another quarterback win a Super Bowl before Joe, that's not something I want. I'd like Joe Burrow to be next. And if that's in 5 years and Mahomes has 8, I think that's something I would prefer rather than a lot of guys to, have one when Burrow inevitably lifts his. So I don't know where Joe's rooting. I think that it would make sense for a lot of people involved in Joe's legacy or anyone in that camp would be rooting for Mahomes. I think that's, he's cemented as number one of this era. I don't think there's anyone that's going to catch him in this era in terms of accolades and awards and Super Bowls. So everyone's kind of battling for number 2, and if you can be the next one to get a ring, I think that's, pretty big. So I think you're absolutely rooting for Patrick Mahomes.
I don't think there's any illusion that Joe Burrow thinks he's, in the same category as Patrick Mahomes in terms of accolades. I don't think he's concerned about it at all. I imagine he watches this game the way I watch a Xavier basketball game. I'm not rooting for anybody. I'm just watching it, right? It's just on my TV. I don't root against Xavier. I probably won't root for the other team. I'm just watching it. I imagine that's what he's doing with the Super Bowl. I don't think he really cares. And to Jacob's point, the Bengals are consistently the only team that are competitive with the Chiefs So why would you care if the Chiefs keep winning? Because it just makes your resume against them look that much better. Nobody else can do it. You're the only team that has a chance to beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. That's been well established up until this point. They would have made 6 straight Super Bowls if it weren't for the Bengals. If you had to put him in a lie detector test to see who he'd be probably rooting for the Eagles, because the NFC has no relevance in terms of his career, his legacy, anything like that. But at the same time, I wouldn't be shocked if it's like, yeah, have Patrick Mahomes win another one. At this point, it doesn't. I mean, was he at 4, 5, 6, 7? Keep having him keep winning. That way, when the Bengals beat him in the playoffs next season, it's just going to mean that much more.
We don't know who Burrow's rooting for, but we do know who another Bengals superstar is rooting for. Jamar Chase is, as a noted hater myself, where I aspire to get to at some point in my life. Be as big of a hater as Jamar Chase. He said it's no question who he's rooting for this weekend.
Everyone knows I'm not a KC fan, so I'm hoping Saquon rushes for like 200 this game. So I think overall it'll be a great game just because both sides has great players on each side.
That might be the nicest thing he's ever said about Kansas City.
I think so.
That is probably the nicest thing he's ever said about Kansas City. But yeah, Jamar rooting for the Eagles, so maybe that rivalry is more college-esque than most NFL rivalries.
Yeah.
I think we obviously look at this from a legacy standpoint, and that's what we're talking about with Hurts winning one before Joe Burrow wins one. But I think if you look at this like an Ohio State, Michigan, or an Alabama, Auburn, of course the Bengals aren't rooting for the Chiefs. They're rivals. So maybe these teams really do have that kind of college feel of hatred towards each other and really not wanting to see the other one on top. And I think that's a pretty cool thing that we miss in the NFL more often than not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I just think the competitiveness of these guys as well, and that's the one thing I do love about Jamar Chase is the fact that he is not. And by the way, he's become more mature as his career has gone on.
Yeah.
Like his tone in that he's saying the same thing he's been saying for years. It just sounded more buttoned up and just more mature. You know what I mean? Like usually he's taking more digs, at the Chiefs nonetheless. But I don't think it's a secret that he's never going to pull for the Chiefs whatsoever. When they were talking about the top QBs in the league last year, he was not willing to say, even though I think we all know Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. He was like, I cannot say that he's the best quarterback in the NFL. For one, he's going to roll with Joe Burrow because he believes it, but 2, that's his guy, and 3, because he was never going to give the Chiefs or Patrick Mahomes or anyone with that organization any kind of credit. If you asked him who's a better head coach, Andy Reid or Zach Taylor, he'll painfully say Zach Taylor because he refuses to give the Chiefs.
I don't know if he'd go that
credit.
far. He might he might not answer the question.
You mean Zach?
Yeah, right.
That's
Yeah,
Zach.
his boy ZT.
Yeah. But no, I think deep down Joe Burrow, I don't think he wants either of these guys to win, but I do believe, because nobody, and by the way, no one is debating, man, Jalen Hurts or Joe Burrow, who would you rather have? But Jalen Hurts has won a lot more. He's in his second Super Bowl, and that'll be another quarterback. Because, this is we're waiting for that new blood to come across and get their first Super Bowl of these young quarterbacks that have come into the league and kind of taken over. Patrick Mahomes keeps hogging them all. I think it would really piss Joe Burrow off to see Josh Allen win one before he does, or Lamar win one before he does. I think it irks him that Lamar has 2 MVPs. As I said earlier, I think if it's between Josh Allen and Lamar, I think Joe Burrow's at this point, might as well just give it to Lamar. I don't need Josh Allen having something else or something I don't have. Because right now, all things being equal, you have Patrick Mahomes, who has all the Super Bowl success. Burrow doesn't have that. Lamar has all the MVP success. Burrow doesn't have that, but either does Josh Allen, either does Jalen Hurts. But if you have Jalen Hurts get a Super Bowl, that's another quarterback that now has something that Joe doesn't have. Lamar with all the MVPs, Mahomes with all the Super Bowls, Jalen Hurts, who was drafted in the same draft as him, now he gets a Super Bowl. I think at this point, it's painful. But the Chiefs have to win it if you're Joe Burrow, just to keep that legacy conversation, to keep that another quarterback from being thrown into the conversation with them from that regards.
Just personally, I'd be sick if we have to spend this summer talking about if Jalen Hurts is a top 5 quarterback. Come on. Save me the time. Jesus Christ. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, that defense, Nick Sirianni. Jalen Hurts is along for the ride, and he might hold the trophy at the end because they have a really, really good roster. If we have to have top 10, top 5 conversations about Jalen Hurts this summer, I'm going to be ill.
I'm a Jalen Hurts guy. I'm a Jalen Hurts guy. I have no knock on Jalen Hurts. He's a part of a play that's going to probably change football and with the tush push. So I have no ill will towards him. I'm probably mentally, or I guess not mentally, in my heart, I'm cheering for the Eagles to win it. I don't think a Super Bowl doesn't change the legacy of Jalen Hurts, in my opinion. Not yet. If he wins an MVP, then we'll start talking about it. But it's, I as of this moment, I don't think it changes that much. And I also don't think like these quarterbacks go out and they're like, oh man, how many MVPs am I behind in the quarterback race? It's like I really don't think that, because outside of a couple guys on ESPN that make it their point to just bash anybody they can for no reason, I like Joe Burrow knows he's a top 5 quarterback. He knows he's a top 4 quarterback.
But is he elite?
But is he elite? It's just talking heads. So if you want to avoid the talking heads, sure, then go ahead and do it. I have a hard time imagining Joe Burrow gives a damn about anything that's said on ESPN.
But he's the most competitive, and it's not just ESPN, by the way. It's all we're talking heads. We're lesser.
We're national. We're national.
We're poorer talking heads.
We have Chiefs fans in the chat.
That's true.
But I think these guys are too competitive to say that they don't care about other quarterbacks winning awards or so. So, Elliot, let me ask you. You said a Super Bowl doesn't matter. The MVP category. If Jalen Hurts wins an MVP, that props him up more than a Super Bowl. It was last week that I think Cam Newton got a lot of heat because he said he would never trade in his MVP for a Super Bowl ever because he earned that MVP in all of that. And that irritated a lot of people because there's a lot of people that say they'll give up all their MVPs to win one Super Bowl for those who don't have them. You're saying an MVP is more valuable than a Super Bowl.
In terms of legacy talk, I think it matters more. I think for a quarterback to establish himself as the best player in a given season, I do think that matters more than a Super Bowl. I mean, no disrespect to Nick Foles, but Nick Foles has a Super Bowl, right? I mean, Trent Dilfer, he has a Super Bowl. So I like it's you can be a serviceable quarterback and skate your way to a Super Bowl. And I think it's a little bit different because I do think Jalen Hurts offers more than those guys do. But Jalen Hurts would be in a similar type of category where Saquon Barkley is the reason that offense clicks. They have weapons every single position. Their offensive line's incredible. Their defense is incredible. Their head coach, despite what our guy Reed Mouse says, doesn't lose football games. Right. Like, they have the best at every single position except for kicker. So I think that there is some sort of excuse, if that's the right word, to say, yeah, maybe he was a good enough quarterback to win a Super Bowl, but that doesn't really change his greatness level for me. I mean, he just skated off the back. If he throws 13 for 20 in the Super Bowl for 125 yards while Saquon runs for 250, it's not his Super Bowl, right?
So the reason I don't give it as much credence to MVPs as Super Bowls is because I get tired of hearing in the MVP, like some of the MVP debate this year about Lamar and Josh Allen. There's a lot of people believe Josh Allen will get it just because it's his turn. It's now his turn. And I'm like, that's not how it works. Like with Super Bowls, it's not, well, we're going to give it like Patrick Mahomes has won a lot, so we're just going to give this Super Bowl to Jalen Hurts because it's his turn. It's his second time here. He's earned it. We literally have those conversations about MVP and the voter fatigue and how that plays a role in this. Joe Burrow's great whether he has the MVP or not. What will separate him from everybody else is his ability to go win a Super Bowl. He's been there. I don't think an MVP separates anyone. I mean, I don't think an MVP has separated Lamar. There's people who are still questioning Lamar's greatness, and he has 2, possibly 3 MVPs coming his way. I think one Super Bowl for Joe Burrow would trump the 3 MVPs that Lamar Jackson's about to have from that perspective. That's why I just can't get on board saying that the MVP is more important than the Super Bowl. However, though, an MVP does cover an entire 3-4 month stretch of a regular season from that in that regards.
More important. I don't know about more important because I disagree with what Cam Newton said. I think any quarterback or any player would probably trade their MVP for a championship.
I don't think any player who only won an MVP and didn't win a Super Bowl would say they'd trade their MVP for a Super Bowl.
You're gonna have to rock that one back.
He won an MVP.
Yeah, we say that.
Win a Super Bowl.
Correct.
He would never say that he didn't love that.
Yeah, no, yeah.
If he had won a Super Bowl and not won an MVP, I'm sure he would say that the Super Bowl was more important. Like,
sure.
Everyone's just forgetting in this whole conversation that he's saying what he did was better. So, of course, he has that take. I think the better conversation, and I heard it brought up on some other podcasts since that quote was given, was which one would he give up? The national championship in college or the Heisman in college? Because that's the only time he won both.
Yeah.
So then you would see which one he values more. But I think he was just more talking about that his legacy is fine without the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And then he worded it poorly.
Yeah, that was. And by the way, if all you've, and to his credit, I'm not going to on national TV say that, hey, yeah, what I accomplished wasn't that great because I didn't win.
Right, that's what I mean.
I think if you give him truth serum, no, he's giving up that MVP for a Super Bowl, no doubt. But I don't think he's going to say that, because then what he would be admitting is that, yeah, this MVP I have isn't that great. I should have won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Then he's just lessening his career accomplishment. I have no problem with him. By the way, I think Cam Newton, when they hired him, I was like, oh, Cam Newton's going to drive me nuts and all this. He's actually probably one of their better analysts. I've actually been very surprised at how good Cam Newton. Yeah, and he comes prepared. I actually think he does a very good job. I wasn't expecting that. I thought he was just going to be over the top on everything, and he's not. Does a very good job. I'm surprised by that. But yeah, I thought that take was interesting last week, and it got people talking. But
just circling back to what we were talking about a couple minutes ago, I saw people already tweeting that Jalen Hurts has better career than Cam Newton. This is what I mean. What I mean. They're either 11 or they're stupid.
If he wins the Super Bowl, what does that do for you versus Cam Newton?
No, not even.
I think, look, let's be
so.
clear. Jalen Hurts' numbers have taken a step back this year, but I don't think it's because he's taken a step back this year. When you have a running back that's doing what Saquon is doing, I don't think he has to put up those numbers. I just don't. I think
his numbers taking a step back aren't why. I didn't think he was good when his numbers were better, to be fair.
No.
Man, you're out. I'm a Jalen Hurts guy.
I think he's a top 20 quarterback in the league.
Might be a
phenomenal leader.
Might be a little bit of bias in there somewhere.
Wait, why would I have Hurts bias?
Alabama fan.
Oh,
he won
yeah.
the championship.
Yeah, it's true.
Alabama loves Jalen Hurts.
Did Tua win it, though? I mean, that's always that weird
SEC,
one, right?
the year after. He came in at halftime for Tua got hurt. He came in at halftime and won this.
Those storylines were wild.
It was a crazy couple years.
The team himself. That was pretty cool. And then to go win a Heisman at Oklahoma. Just all right, well, I'm done with you guys. I'm just going to go over here and do my thing. Pretty, good for him.